Hello and welcome to the second podcast with myself, Orla Allen. We're talking about all things spiritual. Something I want to talk about today is how spirit work. Now, there's a lot of things which you'll hear in television as a whole. I've been hearing a lot lately. I've been rewatching the series Burn Notice, if you've seen that, and he does a bit where he explains a lot of stuff, and one of the things he explains at one point is psychics and how psychics cold read people from the information that they're given off without actually telling you anything. Which is an interesting concept, and it is totally a thing you can do. I worked in sales for years, and yeah, it is very easy to pick up on people's body language to see if something's right or something's wrong or something doesn't feel right or something's not sitting quite right with them. So if you're trying to sell them something, you can tell if they're not liking what you're giving, so you can change up what you're offering them, or you can offer them something else. A little random story. When I worked in retail one time, a lady came in to spend £6. She wanted 3 bottles. They were £2 each. We used to sell these coloured bottles. It was back in the 90s, so it was when things were cheap, or definitely not a lot more cheap than they are today. When she left the shop, she'd spent nearly £200 with me. Now, I wasn't not in that shop anyway. I wasn't a salesperson, like a crazy mad salesperson that's trying to make money. I was just a sales assistant that was trying to help the person. I tapped into what it was that she wanted, or what it was she was trying to create. She was doing a window display for a restaurant that was a couple of streets up. I showed her a whole pile of stuff that I thought might go with the bottles that she was looking for, the aesthetic that she was looking for, and she ended up spending £200, and it's fantastic. And I had a big win, and I slagged a lot about the fact that I got someone who wanted to spend £6 to spend £200. You know, it was a lot of banter. I wouldn't have, if she didn't have the money, I wouldn't have made her spend it. Like, do you know what I mean? Or if she didn't want the stuff, I wouldn't have forced it on her. It wasn't like that. But the point being that if you're good at your job, yes, you can kind of manipulate a situation or manipulate a person into and manipulation's maybe a harsh word there, because in this particular case I wasn't making her buy anything she didn't want. I was helping her create what it was that she wanted to create. So the point is, yes, you can cold read people into certain situations and certain things, and to a certain extent. And every time I hear somebody say that, I check in with myself and I say to myself, am I cold reading people? Am I creating the worlds that they want? Like, I remember doing a workshop with a famous medium, and he gave us all a piece of paper, and it was in an envelope, a sealed envelope, had our names on the outside, and he handed it round to us all, and we all read it. Now, I read mine and I thought, that doesn't quite sit right with me. Yeah, I can kind of take that. That doesn't sit right. I wasn't 100%, but then I wasn't meant to be there that day. So I kind of knew there was no way he could have known I was there. I kind of wanted to believe that on some level he knew I was going to be there. But at the same time, I kind of knew there was something iffy about it. So maybe if I hadn't that knowledge, maybe it would have been different. But discussing it afterwards, he was asking us, could we all take the information on it or whatever, and he was like, well, guess what, I've given every single one of you the exact same letter. He says, you can check, nobody's got anything different. I haven't read for all of you. In actual fact, what he'd given us was a list of Barnum statements, which basically were general statements which anybody could understand or anybody could relate to, so that we could morph the information into what we needed it to be for ourselves. So I thought that was very fascinating, and I kind of put that along with the cold reading and stuff, so there's a lot of stuff that people can say which anybody could take. So there's lots of ways in which I have over the years tried to encourage my students to do things differently, or tried to do things differently myself, so it's that I'm not able to cold read anybody, because I know I'm good at it. Like, I was a salesperson for years. I was a retail manager. I have history there, shall we say. So I don't want to do that to people. I want to be as open and honest and truthful with both spirit and the person I'm giving the message to as I possibly can be. So if I've read for somebody before, I don't like that, because I kind of think, well, What if I'm giving them stuff that I've already given them before? If I read for somebody that I know, there's this level of, well, do you know what? How much of that stuff did I know about that person? Or if I'm given a message from spirit and something comes up that I know, I actually say to the person, look, I think I know this about you, or I think I've heard this about you. Because ultimately, when I'm working with spirit, I try to take myself out of the equation. I try to take a wee step back from it so that I don't influence the information. Like I was talking to a girl the other day, and I was telling her, you know, she was asking how she could get specific information from a family member about her own situation. And I was saying to her, you know, yeah, you can connect in with your family members. Your family members can give you comfort. You can get reassurance from them or whatever, but you can't really ask them for information because you can't guarantee that information is accurate, because you're going to want in yourself a situation to be a certain way, and if you're communicating with spirit, then you can influence the information that's coming forward for you to make it fit whatever agenda you have going on. And it's not intentional. You know, you think you're communicating with spirit, and you are communicating with spirit, but at some point your own brain comes into it and it creates this kind of false narrative so as that things play out the way that you want to, which is fine and dandy, but it can be quite dangerous in certain circumstances. Like, I mean, if you're just in a general kind of what's this year going to hold, and then you start getting all these positive vibes or negative vibes from it, you're kind of putting your own kind of influence on that, and it's then creating what you think the year's going to be. So if you've had a particularly rough patch and you want a wee break from it, and you influence it so that it says that you're going to have a good year, happy days, you're going to be more upbeat, and maybe you will have a good year because of that. Do you know what I mean? But that's fine. That's okay. That's not going to be life or death situations. But when you're starting to delve into like fine inner workings of relationships with people and how to react to them and what they need, there's really too much at stake there. There's been lots of instances of this I've had over the years, where people have expected a certain outcome from a situation and influenced the tools that they use even to get the outcome that they want, which breaks my heart. It really, really does. And that's why when I talk about working with pendulums or whatever, I always say to somebody, look, at these are fun, these are, you know, but don't take them too seriously. Don't take them as law, because you can influence a pendulum much easier than you can information that's coming forward from spirit, and can create whatever narrative it is that you're trying to create there, essentially. So if you take that as your hard fast rule, then that's going to influence your actions towards people and your actions. Like, say for example, if you wanted to know if your partner was cheating, and maybe they've never cheated on you in life, maybe they haven't, maybe you've got personal insecurities, and you're using those insecurities and reflecting them onto the person that you're with. You use a pendulum, the pendulum says you're cheating. What are you going to do about that information? Are you going to just sit in it? I don't think you are. You're either going to start looking through their phone, looking through their personal effects, asking them constantly where they're going to go, and you're essentially going to sabotage your own relationship because of something that you've thought you've picked up on a pendulum, that you've influenced yourself because you expect to find out that this person's cheating on you because of your own history. So from that point of view, it's really important that if you're looking for personal information, you don't look for it yourself. You can get reassurance from your loved ones from spirit. You can get comfort from your loved ones from spirit. But if you're looking for serious, hardcore information about somebody, then you need to go to somebody else that you trust in order to bring forward that information for you. So one of the things that spirit does is that spirit give you the opportunity to do whatever it is that you need to do. Okay, so the reason I started this podcast was because I'm just about to record a meditation, and rather than record the meditation, I come into the podcast because, you know, that's what we do. And so one of the things you can do is you can ask for a guide. And if there's a situation in your life where you need some help, so maybe there's something that keeps cropping up in messages that you're giving people and you're just not hitting the bar. Like, I remember going into a church one time years and years ago, and I wasn't in the right headspace in my mind to actually do platform work. and I certainly wasn't that evening. But I didn't like letting people down, and I kind of felt like, well, maybe I was meant to do it that night. So anyway, I said, right, I'll share the platform with you if you want. And yeah, we did a couple of readings. I got the last couple. There weren't very many people there, and Spirit kept showing me an image. Now it's an image. I knew exactly what the image was. I could see it very clearly, but I didn't know how to translate that into information for the person I was reading for. It was an empty room in a house that I know, and the sun was shining in the window. There was nobody in the room, and there was nothing particularly out of place in the room. So do I talk about the person that lives in the house? Do I talk about the house itself? Do I talk about the room? Do I talk about the light that's coming in the window? What is it I'm supposed to talk about? And the way Spirit work with me is that I will give information about something, especially if they are giving me like the symbol of a person I know. I'll keep talking about that person and talking about that person and talking about that person until they take the person away. So if I'm seeing them, the image will go and it'll move on to something else. So I know I've given all the information that they wanted me to give. But when you're looking at an empty room where nothing's happening, then what is it you're meant to say about it, you know? So perhaps in that situation, now I was standing up on platform at the time, and needless to say, I read Spirit the Right Act when I come off, because I was like, well, do you know what? If you're going to get me to go up there and do that, if I'm going to put my neck out there for you, then you've got to show up for me and you've got to give it to me in a way that I understand. So I'm not left standing there going, I don't know what this means, but here's what I'm seeing. I think I kind of in the end, got to what it was meant to be. But do you know that way that I'd kind of struggled with the image for so long that I don't think the value was there for the person by the time I reached it, if that makes sense. And it certainly wasn't there for me. Yeah, I read Spirit the Right Act, and I was like, right, look, this isn't working for me. I will stand up there if you need me to. I will, if you put me in that situation, somebody asks me to get up, I will get up for you, but you need to show up for me, and you need to make sure that whatever it is that you're giving me is the right thing for me to understand what it is that I'm saying. And if I don't understand it, then you need to give me something else. Because this is a two-way thing, and I think that's the point I'm trying to get at, is that when we work with Spirit, we're doing it. Some people do it for the glory, okay? And that's wonderful. That's brilliant. People need mediums to be able to heal from situations of grief or heal from situations that they've had inflicted on them in their past that they want apologies for, whatever the circumstances are. And in order for us to be able to communicate, then we need to have confidence in what we're saying. We need to have the security in ourselves to know that we can do it. We need to have trust in Spirit to know that the information that's coming forward is correct. And that's an interesting one for me, because I've never really questioned the information from Spirit. Not when it comes forward strong. Like if I know 100% that information's from Spirit, I will pass it on. And that kind of takes me back to what I'm saying about at the start about the cold reading. There's cold reading where I can tell you stuff about a person. I can tell you maybe their habits. I can tell you, what their lifestyle is, whether they're happy, whether they're sad. Now, to kind of skate onto another subject in among all these other subjects, I see auras differently. Like, I know people talk about auras being all these colours that float all around a person and the colours signify stuff. That's not how I see auras. If I look at a person, and it doesn't happen all the time now, but if there's something I need to see in that person, I will see it in their face. I will see it in their energy. So for example, a person could be sitting in front of me and have the most beautiful wee smile in front of them, but I know their heart's breaking, and it's not because there's anything being given away in their expressions, but because I see them as being sad, I see them as being upset, and I'm looking at the person. I can physically see that they're smiling, I can physically see that they look happy, but I'm also looking at them and seeing them as being sad. And that's how I see auras. It's like an extra layer on top of what they visibly represent. And maybe that's how I was such a good salesperson for all these years. I don't know. But yeah, so that's just one of the many ways in which I don't feel like I'm cold reading people. Um, because there's more to it. Okay, there's more to it than the Barnum statements. There's more to it than just cold reading people. And aside from the information that's coming forward, it's the energy, it's the information from spirit. I know that the information I'm getting isn't coming from seeing somebody sat in front of me, with their shoulder lowered, so I know they've got a sore shoulder, whatever, feeding back off their information as I give them information. Because one of the things is that when I read for people, and I had a bit of a medical mishap last year, and I was diagnosed with high blood pressure, which led to me taking medication. It was March last year. March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. We're now in January. So it's the guts of 11 months. So it's nearly a full year now. Well, it was kind of the end of March, beginning of April. But anyway, that's beside the point. I was put on medication for the blood pressure, and I always seem to suffer huge side effects with serious medication. So I can take like paracetamol, that's fine. But with the blood pressure medication, one of the things I ended up with was anxiety. And I was also having, my mind would just go completely blank. I'd be mid-sentence and everything would just blank. And it's like somebody's hit pause on me, do you know? Now, thankfully, my anxiety levels are miles away from where they were, and that brain loss, for want of a better description of it, doesn't happen anymore, thankfully. I am getting an awful lot of migraines at the minute, but that's probably because my blood pressure's back up. Anyway, so I stopped reading for people then, but when I was reading for people, I did it over WhatsApp. Now, a lot of people wanted to see me on WhatsApp. I even had one lady not show her face but wanted to see my face on WhatsApp. And anybody who really knows me intimately knows that I don't leave the house without a full face of makeup. And that's not because I want to be all dolled up, but it's because of my own insecurities that I feel the need to. It's a very, very, very rare occasion that I leave the house without a full lot of makeup on. It's probably late at night and I'm going for a walk and I've got a hoodie on and the hood's up. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, when I did do the readings, I was using WhatsApp. So essentially, it was phone calls. So there was I didn't see the person. And when I'm working with spirit, I tend to speak quickly. I tend to be in my own head. So I wasn't hearing any reactions from them unless they started crying or unless they were making noises or whatever, and I would wait for them to agree with what I was saying or to say they understood what I was saying, and then I'd move on to the next thing. So there was no cold calling to be had. So the information I was giving people was coming straight from me. I'm currently sitting in my wee recording booth, which is basically about a metre by half a metre space, and it was just me and my phone, and I had my iPad recording the reading for them so that they had a copy of it so they could listen back to it later. So I know for a fact I don't cold read people, because I wouldn't be able to give people the information if I needed to see them, or if I needed to read their body language, or if I needed to listen to cues off them. Because I tell people not to tell me stuff. Now, once I have established that I've connected with spirit, once I've given maybe about 10 minutes, 15 minutes worth of information, and if somebody wants to jump in then and tell me, what something I'm saying means, I don't need to know what it means, do you know? As long as they understand what it means. Now, sometimes people will say to me, I think it means this, and I'll be like, that doesn't feel right to me. I don't feel like that's what I'm talking about, and I'll go back to it and I'll maybe explain it a wee bit better or a wee bit deeper, or Spirit will give me new information so that the person understands 100% what it is I'm talking about. So from that respect, it makes me feel like, no, yes, I will concede there are people out there who probably do cold read people. There are fakes out there. I remember hearing somebody give me a recording of a reading that somebody had done for them, and it was absolutely horrendous. They There was nothing about that information that said they were reading psychically or mediumistically for that person, and the person kept saying no, and the reader kept going, and the whole thing was just, yeah, it was a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. So I do know that there are fake people out there, which is quite concerning and quite heartbreaking, because do you know what? Anybody can read, anybody can speak to spirit. Not everybody should, but anybody can speak to spirit. And when I say not everybody should, what I mean by that is your mental health for yourself and for the information you're given has to be in a good place in order for you to be able to give honest and open information from spirit. Now, when I was having the anxiety with my medication, I stopped reading for people. I honoured the readings I had, but it was putting an awful lot of pressure on me. It was pushing my blood pressure up through the roof, which doesn't help. And yeah, there was a couple of times where I knew the information was coming forward from spirit. I just didn't feel confident in how I was passing that information on. And it was me, not spirit, and not the person I was reading for. So I had to just kind of back out of one or two of them and say, look, this isn't working for me today. I'm really sorry. It's me, 110%. It's me. It's medication. It's all that stuff. Yeah, so we have a personal responsibility. If our mental health isn't in the right place, like I was saying to you earlier, we can influence stuff. So if, like with the pendulum, if there's an expectation that the information that's coming forward is going to be a certain way, so perhaps someone comes to you and, like I said, I don't want people to tell me anything before I start reading for them. Now, there are occasions, to add a caveat to that, there are occasions where I will say to somebody, like if I'm reading for somebody, I could bring forward a couple of generations back. So I could give you your great-grandfather, I could give you your grandmother. And judging by what the age of that person would have been when they lived, you could probably cold call an awful lot of information from that. I don't believe that if you haven't met the person in spirit, or you don't know about the person in spirit, there's any proof in that whatsoever, unless somebody specifically wants to know. And I've had a couple of people come to me with that as well. Like I had one person come forward and they didn't know their father, but they wanted to speak to them in spirit. And I was like, right, okay. I did bring forward the father. I gave them information, and I was like, I've no way of backing this up because you can't tell me yes or no. But we brought forward the father, and there was certain elements that the father was able to give me which related to people's personality that was surrounding the family, or certain situations that happened within the family that the person didn't know about. So for me, that in itself validated the rest of the information, because if I knew about them, then the rest of it kind of had to be right as well, do you know? So it was quite nice and it was quite interesting, and especially when the healing came at the end for the message, it was quite beautiful to then be able to say, right, okay, here's a wee something just for you that you've never had before, that you're obviously desperately looking for, and that's another thing too. If you know somebody desperately needs to hear something from spirit, you have a responsibility to only give them what you're being told, not to give them what you think they need to hear. Does that make sense? So yeah, there's lots of reasons why, if your mental health isn't in the right place, you can influence a reading so that it's what you want the person to know, not what spirit want the person to know. Which is another wee side note. When we're working with spirit as mediums, we've got certain expectations, and we've got certain standards that we hold ourselves to. Like I was saying, I listened to that reading from the girl, who I don't believe was communicating with spirit for one one little iota. And I ended up reading for the girl who let me hear the recording for free, because I was like, I feel like you're going to go away and think that we're all fakes or we're all frauds, do you know? So I read for her and gave her the information that came forward for her. And I felt like it was important that Spirit got a message across to her, do you know? There's so much to take into consideration. You know, people sit in circles and they do development groups and they do workshops and they do all these different things. And I mean, you can develop for years and years and years and not feel ready to do it. And that's a shame too, because there's lots of people who should be working with the general public or should be working with people, and they aren't because they don't have the confidence. That is one of the things that really kind of grates on me sometimes. I've written a book just for today, a Reiki Master's Teaching Handbook, because I'm also a Reiki Master. And the reason I wrote the book was firstly because you're given the information about the 3 courses, but nobody tells you how to actually teach. And secondly, there are so many beautiful wee souls out there who should be working with Spirit, who should be doing Reiki, who should be teaching Reiki, who should be, a Reiki practitioner helping people. Some people just genuinely need Reiki in their life and don't need to be giving it or sharing it with anybody else. But the reason for the book was that the good, beautiful souls don't have the confidence as some of these people who are quite aggressively selling their tools, for want of a better description. Whether there was ability there at the start and whether there's ability there now is debatable in some cases. But there's some absolutely beautiful souls out there who have served their time, who have served churches, and who just come to the conclusion that they want to step away from it because either they don't have the confidence in themselves, or they're seeing people out there who are really loud about being present, and they're looking at them and thinking, I can't do that. I can't be in your face like they are. So yeah, I think it's really important that if you feel like you shouldn't be doing it, that you ask yourself why, because maybe the reason that you shouldn't be doing it is the exact reason why you should. And if your answer is mental health in any way, whether it's something that you're going through, maybe it's a relationship breakup, and that's not to say that everyone who's breaking up from a relationship can't be a medium, but depending on what you're dealing with, you need to take into consideration, is this the right time for you to be a medium? Is this the right time for you to be working with the general public? And like I was saying with the anxiety from the medication, and I felt like I was failing Spirit, I was failing myself, and I wasn't giving people what they needed. Now I did go on and I honoured the people I had in my diary that were booked in. But I said to most of them before it started, look, I'm on medication here. I don't know how this is going to go. I might have to call it a day in the middle of it. It might go great, do you know? And you know what? Whether you're in perfect mental health or whether you're struggling with something, whether it's medication or whatever, there are times where messages or readings are going to go wrong for you. And that isn't always your fault. That isn't always a sign of anything you've done wrong. It can be what the person's going through at that particular time. It can be what that person wants to hear and what Spirit wants to tell them are 2 completely different things. Perhaps you bring forward the person from Spirit that they don't want to speak to. When I do a reading for somebody, if it's a one-on-one reading, I will turn around to them and I'll say, right, who is it that you want? Who is it you'd like me to bring forward? And the reason I do that, which I know for a lot of mediums that puts the fear in them, but at the end of the day, we're either communicating with Spirit or we're not. And if you're coming to somebody for a reading, so you're giving up your time to sit down with this person and listen to what they have to say with their communication from Spirit. Maybe you haven't had a reading before. Maybe you've waited for 3 months to get this reading. So surely you want to speak to who you want to speak to. Do you know what I mean? And that doesn't mean it's disrespectful that if you want to speak to your dad and your mum comes forward, or that you're pushing anybody out, or that you always ask for your dad or your partner or whoever, or if you ask for them then they can't be with somebody else, because spirit are omnipresent. They can be wherever they need to be at any given time, in several different places if they want. Time doesn't work the same way there as it does for us. So yeah, there's lots of things which you can do in a message. But if you've asked for somebody specific to come forward, so if I say to you, right, who do you want to speak to? I don't want an awful lot of information from them. I either want their name or relationship. And what I do is I'll take that information. So I'll go, right, okay, I'll connect them with spirit and I'll say, right, they want to speak to their sister. And then I will build up an image of a lady who represents their sister in my head. And I will give them that information. Now, why I do that and what makes that more significant for me is that hopefully they only have one sister in spirit. You're giving them information and their response is either going to be a yes or a no. You're either right or you're wrong. There's no two ways about it. Now, if you don't ask for someone to come forward, then you could be talking about anybody. So you've got a woman. How many women do they know? She feels like family. How many family females do they have in spirit? You've given them a long list. They're then checking each one, and maybe they miss the information from the person that maybe you're going to give them a name. Like I said, I don't do names. I just actually did reading on TikTok, and I said it in the reading. I've just realised I didn't say it in the podcast. Did a reading on TikTok. I put it on YouTube as well if you want to go and have a look at it. But I did a reading and I don't give names from spirit as a rule. So when a name comes forward, I know I have to give it. But I also know that name can represent different things. And it just so happened that the two names I gave in this reading were Mary and Jack. And Mary for me would be the Virgin Mary from the Catholic religion, or the name Mary. I can actually take Mary several different ways myself, but that's the way that I felt guided to speak about in this reading. And Jack was either the name Jack or it was like a Jack in a playing card Jack. Could have been a Jack of a car, but that wasn't again where I went. It was the playing card Jack, so the person either played cards or had a connection to cards, or the name Jack. Now something I did also say when the name was coming forward, because if you have common names like John and James and Mary, depending on where you live, there'll be different common names for your country or your space or your lifestyle. So for me, if the name's going to be significant, it's got to be in close proximity. So if spirit are to give me a name, it either has to be the person's name or it has to be somebody really close to them. So like a brother or best friend, or an uncle or father. It can't be somebody that lives three doors down, somebody they knew in high school for like 5 minutes, somebody they just knew existed but didn't have any relationship with. For me, that's not evidence. For me, that's not it's not proof of anything, because if you're taking a common name and just throwing it out there, now it turns out I don't know an awful lot of these common names that people talk about in Scotland, but I'm Irish, so for me, common names aren't as common as a medium might expect them to be. And if you're just throwing those names out there, then you need to have them relative to the story. And that's one of the big things for me, is when a medium's working, they have to tell a story. There has to be related. So if you're going to give me my father, if you're going to give me his name, what he did for work, and then you throw me somebody I went to school with, they don't relate for me. Do you know what I mean? They're completely separate stories. So it's either the dad or it's the person in school. The two don't cross. So what I'm trying to get at is that, and what this whole podcast is actually about, is that We set the rules with spirit, okay? We set the rules for what we are prepared to do, what we're prepared to say. So are we going to swear in our messages? If the spirit person swore like a trooper, are we going to use the same words the spirit person used? Are we going to do that in a private reading, or are we going to do that on platform? So you've got things that you need to consider there. Obviously, you can't swear on platform. Well, you can, but you might not get invited back. And you might offend people, which is obviously the furthest thing from what you want to do. And, you know, there's some mediums out there who like to be in your face, who like to be controversial. But at the end of the day, we're representing spirit. We're representing the greater good. We're representing healing. We're representing being able to pass on information with love and respect from spirit. And while I swear like a trooper, I'm not going to do it on platform. Now, if somebody come forward swearing at me, they'd have to have a reason for it, and I'd explain the reason, and I would say, right, they're using colourful language, or they're swearing here. Would you understand that being the person? And some people swear and some people don't swear, so that in itself is a form of evidence, you know. But then that's a bit like the Barnum statement. And this is the thing, that you set your rules and regulations for spirit. You say, right, okay, X, Y, Z, this is acceptable to me, this isn't acceptable to me. And what you're left with should be a whole pile of information that relates to the person. So either you've asked who they want you to bring forward, and you've brought that person forward, and you get yes, 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 yes. And that's where the proof lies. Okay, so you've maybe given something that's a little bit general here, and maybe your third piece of information and your fifth piece of information, maybe your 10th piece of information. But when you put all that information together, that creates a picture of what this person is like, who they are. And in that sense, you're giving that person back to the person that you're reading for. You're letting them know that they're here with you. You're giving them comfort of the information that they're bringing forward. Perhaps the information that you're given is how they would describe that person, or perhaps that information that you're giving them is reminding them of little things that they did. So perhaps they have memories that they provide for you that the two people shared together, or perhaps there's, you know, maybe a smell that spirit bring forward for you, so is that person relates that smell to the person in spirit. Perhaps they tell you about stuff that they're doing round about this person to let them know that they're with them on a day-to-day basis. So there's lots of ways in which you can actually communicate with spirit. There's lots of ways in which you can prove that you have the person in spirit. For me, by asking who it is that they want and giving them the information from that specific person is more proof than just giving them information about a person in spirit that they can relate to, because it means then instantly they know whether it's right or wrong. Instantly they know whether you've brought that person forward or not. And sometimes they still need to go away and think about information. Sometimes they still need to get it validated. And when that happens, you know, it gives them like a little bit of homework. And in doing so, keeps them talking about the person that's in spirit for that wee bit longer. Gives them an excuse to talk to somebody about that person that's in spirit. And perhaps gives the other person a chance to talk about the person in spirit as well, which I think is a beautiful thing. It's like a gift that just keeps giving and giving and giving. So when you want to work with spirit as a medium, you can set your own rules. You can set your own guides. You can ask for a new guide to come forward to help you with something that's concerning you. And maybe spirit will come back and say to you, yeah, you don't need to be worried about that. That's not something you need to be concerned about, which is fantastic. Or they'll come back and they'll say, yeah, we'll help you with that. Here's a guide. Here's somebody that will point you in the right direction. Or perhaps they will direct you to somebody to do a workshop with them, to do a development group with them. In that way, they're helping you to develop what it is that you've asked for. Just remember, be careful what you wish for. I say that with love. I have a healing guide who is very straightforward, to the point. I'll ask a question, he gives me an answer, and if I question it, so I'll be like, really? Then he goes blank. So it's like I've been watching a TV so I can see all these visual stuff. And then it's like somebody switched the TV off and it's black, just jet black. And I'm left looking at the inside of my eyes. And it's almost like an attitude of, you asked, I answered. If you're going to ask me again, I'm gone. I'm out of here. And I just absolutely love that. I think it's brilliant. Do you know, it's very clear cut. It's very straight down the line. You asked, I answered, end of story. Do you know, if you need a new guide, ask for a new guide. If you don't want Spirit talking to you while you sleep, tell Spirit not to talk to you or not interrupt you when you're sleeping. And if you want Spirit to interrupt you in your sleep, what I would recommend is that you don't, firstly. But if you're going to insist on doing it, then don't do it every night. Do it maybe once a week or once a month. Do it on a specific time where you don't have anything special the next day, where you don't have anything you need to focus on or concentrate on, so that when Spirit come and interrupt your sleep, you're able to get a little bit of rest too, because you need your sleep. It's good for your health. It's good for your blood pressure, just, point in case. So be careful what you wish for, and know that Spirit are only limited by the limits that we put on them. So bear that in mind. Set your intention before you start. Make sure you open up and close down. And know that anything else is possible with Spirit. And we are the ones that restrict what they're capable of. Now, that said, some people come to me and ask, I had somebody recently ask me how soon Spirit can communicate once they've passed. And I know from personal experience that my grandfather reached out to me the moment he passed. So I know Spirit can communicate right at the instant where they pass. He came to me in Spirit because I'd already let him go. I had set him free, and by him reaching out to me, I had almost completed my grieving for him when he died, if that makes sense. So when Spirit don't come forward straight away, either you've not gone to the right medium, or that sounds bad, that sounds very flippant actually. What I mean by that is not every medium is in full control of what is coming forward from Spirit. And to be honest, none of us are in 100% control. But some people have more control over how they communicate with Spirit or who communicates with them than others are. Some people just kind of see what's going to come forward and let that be the message, let that be the person that they communicate with. But like I said, I ask who you want and I ask for that person to come forward. Not saying that I'm any better than anybody else, but it is standard practice in places like America where they set you the task as a student to ask for a specific person to come forward. And that's the difference. An awful lot of mediums are in this place of feeling honoured about Spirit coming forward and communicating with them. And yes, I think it is a beautiful thing. I think it's a beautiful honour. I respect it greatly, but I also believe that everybody's capable of it. I actually come from a place where I'm not looking to be a medium. I never asked to be a medium, but I've been communicating with Spirit since I was wee. And I will happily pass on their information as long as they're happy to give me good, strong, solid information to pass on to people that I'm happy and content with, that I know I'm not letting anybody down, either myself, them, or the person that I'm reading for. So remember, Spirit have no limits. Anybody can be a medium, but not everybody should be. So ask yourself if your mental health is in the right place, if you're physically able to do it, and be grateful for and respectful of the information that you get. It's a two-way street, remember that. If there's something you need from this, if there's something you need to make your communication easier, better, more straightforward, then speak to Spirit, tell them what you need, and they'll either provide it or they won't. And if they won't, they'll tell you why. And if they don't tell you why, ask them and they'll tell you why. Spirit have more capabilities than we can ever possibly imagine, and it's only us as human beings limiting that information as we go forward. So that's about the end of the podcast for today. If you are interested in listening to any of my guided meditations, you're more than welcome to do so. All the meditations that I do for the circle on a Wednesday night, I post on YouTube, so you can listen to them there for free. I am hoping to get some of my meditations done up for Spotify in the next wee while, and they will probably be exclusively on Spotify and not available on YouTube. That's about it for today. I hope you've enjoyed the podcast. I hope you come back and listen to some more. I hope you find me on social media. I'm on TikTok as Orla Allen Author. I'm also on TikTok as Orla Allen Medium. And you'll find me on Facebook as Orla Allen. You'll find me on Instagram as Orla Allen. And you'll find me on YouTube as Orla Allen, because that's who I am. Have an absolutely wonderful and blessed day, and I will speak to you all again soon, hopefully. Take care.